Okay, so why is it that we like to take sports pictures? What is it about sports images that intrigues us about sports? Well, I guess I can really speak for myself, but I'm sure a lot of people would agree. For me, capturing sporting moments in history is basically unlike taking pictures at any other events. The thing that is so unique with sports is that, basically, it only happens once, in the blink of an eye. So, if you miss that one shot, well basically, you've missed it. There's no replay button or tone place just to hold on, just so that you can prepare your camera. So, in essence, that is what makes it exhilarating. Knowing that you just get that one shot, and, well, you gotta make it count. Every second you're out there. You really need to be on your toes the whole time. No distractions, put your phone on silent, otherwise, the moment you take your eye away from the sport you're covering, basically, you're missing out on the action. Because it happens only once, you have the power to record that moment of history forever on your digital camera. That in itself is why it is important to know the sports you're covering, so that you do get the best shots you can when you're out there. There's nothing worse than sitting on the wrong side of the field, or having shots of players, well, constantly with their backs to you. Know your sport, and you will get lots of excitement and thrill out of taking sports pictures. The feeling, the thrill of capturing that one goal, the one that won that basketball game, or the winning kick. When you see those pictures on your camera, what an awesome feeling. The emotion. But remember, sports isn't always about capturing the most exciting sporting moments. Many moments are also captured through photos of emotion. This can be of team players, coaches, audience members, cheering squad. There are many elements to an event that make it momentous, so it doesn't always have to be about what's on the field. As much as it is important to capture the game, the players, all that jazz, it is also important to capture things that are off the field. These aspects are very important to capture as they do to contribute to the history of the game and why it was special. People know they're going to a game to see the game. That's a given. But they also go because of the noise, the atmosphere, the activities, the food. There may be a band playing during halftime, or the mascot for either team walking around. These are also integral aspects to sport as a whole. All of these aspects add to the beauty of sports photography. What makes for great sports images? A starting point is to know the game. Do your research on the players, the scoring, look at past videos, or simply observe. This is so you know the best vantage points for taking your photographs. Where should I place myself for the best angles of players? For example, when shooting a soccer game, you really have to decide one thing before you know the game. Which team am I concentrating on? This way, if any goal attempts are made, well, you can be on the right side when the goalkeeper jumps to save the ball. Shots like these are crucial, as they are decisive moments that can determine the outcome of a game. So be ready when these moments occur. Observe the game. Watch the players for a minute or two to see where they go. How are the players passing the balls to each other? There are normally 1 to 6 players that like to take the spotlight when in the game. So concentrate on these players, because they are likely the ones likely to make the majority of the goal attempts made during a game. These are players that you track every moment of the game to see what they do. That's not to say other players are unimportant, just pay extra attention to these players, for the shots you take of them are likely the ones you publish and use more later. The questions you need to have answered in your mind include: where do I stand to get the best angles and at which points of the game? This is solely dependent on how well you know the game and where the players will be, so the backs aren't to you when you take your photo. How long is the game? How much time is left? Where should you be in the game halfway through? Answering questions such as these are very helpful, as around halftime in any match or game is usually where things heat up and get really exciting. And then things get really interesting when there is usually around 30 minutes or less left in the game. Both teams at this point really want to make most of the game time left and are likely to produce better moves. Remember, it is okay to move around during a game. You're not restricted or ordered to stay in the same spot. So, move around. It's okay. Of course, where you do stand depends on your style of photography and what type of shots you want to get. So generally, I like to stand near the goalkeeper or goal area. This can be at either side of the field or near the net, such as for courtside sports. And feel free to move around in this vicinity to get your best angles. Once you do get your spot, keep in mind of the best vantage points. Should I sit down or stand up? Generally, for more dramatic effect, such as for courtside sports and shots, photographers would sit down to get a nice upper angle of the player, and if you can, get the net in the shot as well. Such shots enable you to capture the players in a more grand style, giving the subject, a sense of empowerment. Many shots can be obtained doing different things, so feel free to experiment depending on your taste and what you feel is appropriate. Just remember, do not get in the way of the referees or the umpires or the other players or any spectators, especially at courtside sports such as basketball or netball. So if either of these officials gets in your way, simply shift your body so that they're not blocking your frame. You may need to do this multiple times. How do I compose my shot? When it comes to taking sports pictures, you really want to isolate the subject matter from the background, so use whatever zoom lens you have, preferably a 200mm or longer focal length, and zoom in to the subject as much as you can so they do fill the frame. And when I say fill the frame, I mean the whole viewfinder or image. This way, when you look back at the image, our eyes are focused on the subject matter, this being the player or players. The last thing you want is to have any obstruction in the frame. So also try to avoid having unnecessary items in the background. Move around if you need to. Basically, you want strong focus on your subject and to avoid distractions taking us away from that. Again, move around if you need a different vantage point in order to get the best one. It is unlikely you'll need to move around a lot during game, hopefully not, but it is good to be prepared to do this. Just do the best you can, vantage point wise, depending on the location. It is okay to take test shots. We are on digital after all, so don't be afraid to take more than one from various points so that you can see how it turns out. This is also a good way to get an idea of what angles you can get from various points at your shooting locations, and just make a mental note. Oh, for field goal I can go to point A. For team 2 goals I can go to point B, and so forth. This is a good mental preparation so that you're not scurrying around everywhere trying to cover the whole game from all vantage points. It can't be done. You are just one person. So you don't need to be Superman in terms of getting across the whole field. Pick your vantage points carefully so at the end of the game you'll get some great sports shots. So when do I actually take the photo? This will depend on your sport and your research. The things to look out for are when the players are likely to make emotional facial expressions. This could be after the players get a goal and is then surrounded by the teammates, or a fan's in reaction to a goal. Just keep an eye out for these decisive moments where players or people will have a reaction to something happening. These are also always great opportunities for some stunning sports images. This is why it is important to always be on your toes. Whatever captures your eye, anything that is interesting, just capture it. That way you get more options when you are looking at your images later for editing. There's nothing wrong with getting many options to pick from. So it's better to have too many than not enough. We are in the digital age after all. And of course, the main photos to take are of the game itself. Look for moments, like when players are about to go for a goal, or the goalkeeper attempting to catch or block the ball from a goal or a score. The main thing is to imagine the moment, basically right before the big moment as it is happening, and then review the image to see if you have captured the moment. If not, try again. It could be as simple as not pressing the shutter early enough. The timing can take some practice depending on the camera you're using. So just keep trying and you'll get it. You can try a thing called pre-fire. Basically with this, you're taking the photo a second or two before you think the moment will happen. Just as right before the player kicks the ball for a goal attempt. So if you can, put your camera on continuous shooting mode or drive mode. So yeah, you have more of a chance to capture that moment. For outdoor sports photography, when there's lots of light and shooting in the day, I normally use ISO 400 or higher. Higher if I need a faster shutter speed. So try 400, and then if your shutter speed still isn't 1000 or higher, just increase it to about 500 or 800. Keep in mind, the thing with using a higher ISO is there is higher chance for grain to show up in your images. So just keep an eye on your images so that you are only increasing the ISO so that as long as noise isn't that visible, or you try to keep it minimal. This would depend on the camera body. So increase it just enough so your shutter speed is around as fast as 1,000th of a second or faster. Don't be scared of increasing it, just so you can keep the grain down. If you don't increase it, the downside is that your shutter speed is too slow, that you just can't capture action. So the choice is yours. Feel free to email me or send me a message if you'd like help on this, depending on the spots you're capturing. I use the shutter speed of 600th of a second, so it's pretty fast. Hence, being able to capture the ball in mid-air, as well as some of the sand near the goalkeeper's feet as he is moving his feet to save the ball. This is known as freezing the action, the use of a faster shutter speed that you are literally able to freeze such fast motion of objects and particles. You don't necessarily need to have a fast digital SLR to obtain fast shutter speeds. As long as your camera does have a mode that allows you to set the shutter speed yourself or use the sports mode, and yeah, you can obtain shots like this. In the shot, the player in the blue shirt has just kicked the ball in attempts for a goal. This is a decisive moment, as this kick, if successful, could be a goal for their team. With most shots in sports, it is important to have the ball in frame, just before they are going for any goal attempts, or as one is being blocked. This is the ideal moment that you really want to capture. With the shutter speed, always use the fastest one you can, generally 1,000th or higher. You want the fastest you can to capture the action. So, given the lighting conditions, just use the fastest. Feel free to play around with the settings during the game. Don't be afraid to change it, as lighting conditions do change, especially when taking pictures outdoors. I generally like to shoot in manual mode so that I do have full control of the shutter speed and other settings at all times, and they remain the same. And I know the results are consistent. If I need more light, simply lower the shutter speed. It's only this and ISO that I would generally change during the game. In regards to the aperture, to always get the fastest shutter speed, always shoot with the largest aperture or the smallest f-stop. This is such as f4, if your lens permits, or lower. This helps ensure that you get the fastest shutter speeds to capture the action. If your lens has any form of vibration reduction or image stabilizer, use these as well to help reduce camera shake when capturing your images. Depending on your lens capabilities, experiment with what you can do to produce the best results, as each lens works differently depending on the brand. What gear should I use? In regards to lenses, I like to use a Sigma 70-200mm f2.8 lens for sports. This helps me get in on the action, particularly when zooming in at the 200mm range. This focal length of zoom is what I'd consider a good zoom when doing sports. However, when covering any field sports, such as soccer or rugby, anything larger, such as 400mm or longer, well, if you can afford it, is always better. But for this lecture, I'll stick with discussing more affordable gear and not exceeding the $2,000 range. To reiterate, you don't need the best or most expensive camera body to get the best images. So get a camera that you feel comfortable in using. Brands like Canon and Nikon produce great image quality. I personally use a Canon 40D and I find that comfortable. So go to your nearest camera store and simply ask to test out some of the cameras. See which one you like the feel of. When I say this, I mean the arrangement of the buttons, the weight, the size, the menus. Fiddle around with the camera. Ask a salesperson their opinion and advice. Play around with some camera bodies and see which one you like. You might not necessarily pick up the one you like in the first instance, so try out as many as you need. Remember, at the end of the day, it is you who will be using the lens and the camera. So it is important that you are comfortable and happy with using this gear. Technically speaking, when you are getting a feel for the camera and where the buttons are, the main thing to look out for is that the buttons for adjusting aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, the manual settings, are easily accessible. I would not recommend a camera body that does not let you do this easily and quickly. Don't be fooled if the camera looks fancy or has heaps of fancy features. At the end of the day, the way your image comes out is in your adjustment of these settings. So make sure they can be adjusted easily. You do not need to overspend in terms of the best gear. The best gear does not necessarily equal the best photos. Also, unless you're shooting for a big magazine or big newspaper, I would not recommend spending more than $800 to $1,000 for a camera body. DSLRs that are below this price range also give great images. Feel free to bring in a memory card, take some sample photos from the cameras you try, so that you can compare images later at home. Most of the digital SLR cameras out there will be able to capture great sports pictures. So what it really comes down to is which camera you like the look and feel of, and especially the weight. Don't get a camera that you find is too heavy, otherwise you will get tired. Plus, there is the weight of the lens. The main features you will be looking for is that you can easily change the manual settings, such as ISO, aperture, and shutter speed easily. So go to your local camera shop, try out some cameras, and see which one you like. So I use a Canon 40D. Without getting too much into technicals, I'll just mention a few points about this body and why it is great for sports. The main thing is the ability to shoot in 6.5 frames per second. This means when I put the camera in high-speed continuous shooting or burst mode, I can take pictures of a rate of 6.5 frames per second. That is, when I hold down the shutter button, in 1 second I can take 6.5 pictures. This is a great feature when taking off action, as you simply hit the shutter button maybe a split second before it happens, before the big moment, and then of the following frames there's a real good chance you'll be able to freeze the action there. Of course, doesn't guarantee it, but it does give a better chance, rather than trying to freeze the action and get the timing spot on in just one shot. It is important to make sure that the camera body you do get does have a buffer of at least 20 photos or higher. Basically, the more the better. This is basically the number of photos that the camera can take before it needs to write to the memory card. So, the more the better. Especially for sports. This is vital, as if it is 5 shots. Once you take 5 shots in sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, really quickly, the camera needs to stop and write those shots to the memory card. So, if you're wanting to cover any form of sports, I highly recommend a body with at least a buffer size of at least 20-30 photos. If you are keen on taking more photos per game, then definitely more than 30. The Canon 40D is the size of about 60 photos or more, depending on the image quality size. I use the burst mode, so you can imagine that would easily fill up the buffer quickly. And that brings us to the topic of memory cards. So, the popular question, which memory card should I buy? What brand? What speed? With regards to the type of memory card, such as SD, CF, this is dependent on the camera body you do get. Two popular formats are CF and SD, so simply get the card that fits your camera. Have a look at your instruction manual, or ask the shop you purchased the camera from. They'll probably be able to work out a good deal with you, as well as for additional accessories you get with your purchase. In terms of brand, I use SanDisk and sometimes the cheaper memory cards. Generally class 4 or get class 10 if you can. These brands have never failed. I'm not saying they'll never fail, I've just never had a problem. They are pretty reliable and just work. I always use a memory card of at least class 4 or 300 times speed. These are preferable speeds, just so that the camera can write to the card quickly, without using up buffer space. Of course, they do cost considerably more, but they are the preferred speed. If you're wanting to save a bit on cost, just make sure your camera does have a large enough buffer size. In the long run, a large buffer size is always great to get. You can snap away without waiting for the camera to load images onto the card. Again, consult your local camera store to see the options they have available. Ask me if you are unsure on which memory card you can buy, as there are many options available. So, where can I get equipment from? You can easily pick up a lens like this from any of your camera retailers near you. Or, if you have any tech-minded friends or hobbyists, or better yet professionals, see if you can borrow one of theirs. No matter what your source, the important thing is you get a lens with good zoom, at least 200mm. At this point, the main thing is you can zoom in on the action. Don't worry too much about other too technical features about the lens, such as frame rates. As long as you can zoom in to the action, you can get some pretty good shots. Some shops may allow you to rent out equipment, so this is also an option instead of buying the lens immediately. You can try it out if you want to have a good feel for the lens, the weight, to see how it fits with you. There's nothing worse than getting equipment that is too heavy to use or simply ergonomically does not feel nice to shoot with. Use what works for you. Look up reviews online, such as the website dphoto.com for lenses. They usually give image samples for you to see. This gives a good indication of the image quality the lens can provide. If you can, grab yourself a monopod or a tripod. This just helps with additional stability for the lens, especially if you are shooting for a day or a few hours. I'd highly recommend it. It makes you look cooler, and it is great for helping obtain sharper images. These are great for field sports, such as soccer or rugby, where you are likely to stay in one spot for longer periods and not move around as much. Check out the options that they do have at your camera shop, because there is a range of options available. The heavier, the more expensive, but this does mean for greater stability. So again, have a look and see which lens you do find comfortable using. Manfrotto is a good brand, or Velbon. The monopod is not an essential accessory, but if you can't afford one, they are very useful. The other option is just to get a tripod and fold up the other two legs. Works the same way. You may look a bit silly, but if you are getting sharper images, why not? Now that you have your gear all ready, the next question becomes, what do I shoot and where? The answer to this is quite simple. Ask yourself, what do you want to shoot? This can be netball, soccer, rugby, baseball, basketball. It's completely up to you. Once you decide what you do want to shoot, do some research. If you like taking pictures of soccer, just contact your local sports clubs or sporting organizations and simply ask them, or check out the website to see what games or events they do have on. You'd be surprised on what is out there and how much events are on if you just look. Don't be scared to call them or send them an email saying you are a local photographer just wanting to get some experience and that you'd be keen to help out with some photos. Many organizations or clubs are happy to have a budding photographer like yourself to take pictures for them for free. Also, the important thing with consulting the organizer is that they will usually know the schedule for the games for the season. You can plan your scheduling accordingly. And getting friendly with the organizers allows you access to many places you wouldn't normally get if you just turned up without telling them. Just get in contact and see where it leads. Different organizations and bodies do work differently, so just be open to talking to them in terms of what will work. This bit can actually be quite difficult, how to approach organizations, so feel free to contact me if you need tips in this area. I've written sample letters that I write to local organizations that I want to try creating a relationship to shoot for. So you've come back from a great day of shooting some sports and you're at the computer thinking, now what do I do? Well, for this lecture, I'm going to be discussing using the software program called Picasa. There are many other paid options out there, but for this lecture, I'll be going into detail with Picasa, since it is a free program and it's simple and intuitive to use. So simply Google Picasa, that's spelled P-I-C-A-S-A, and download the program. Once you have it, import your images into the program so that you do have it in your catalog. Have a look at the instruction manual on the web of Picasa to see how you specify how to import only certain files into the program. Otherwise, it will do a full scan of the computer for all images. And personally, I've found that annoying. So specify that folder first. Once you have your images in Picasa, it's time to process the images. Have a flick through your images to see which ones you like. So double click the first one and keep hitting the right button on your keyboard to see the next image. If you like it, simply hit the star button in the program to make note that you like this image for later use. Depending on how many images you shot, this may take up to an hour or more, so be patient. I'd recommend, if you can, having a look through your images with another person, just so you do get a second opinion, preferably another photographer, so they know what to look for. Once you have these images starred, look at these images again. There is an option in Picasa to only look at starred images. So click this button first to take away or hide unstarred images. Once you have these starred images, look through these images, make note which images clearly need to be adjusted for things like brightness, colors, contrast, or need to be cropped. Be wary at this stage of jumping to processing or editing every single image, as this can take a while. So I would avoid minor adjustments or tweaks to your images, especially if it's not really necessary. Otherwise, you can really waste a lot of time making minor changes. Obviously, the point is to make noticeable changes that will have an impact on your images overall to really enhance it, especially if you are going to publish these photos online or will show it to the organization or club you took pictures for. The goal of the processing is to enhance images. You always do your best to get the images properly exposed, crisp, and sharp when you take it in the first place. Otherwise, you can waste valuable time touching up images you could have properly exposed in the first place when you did take the photo. Once you have your images processed, it is time to publish them. Export your images using the export button at the bottom of the Picasa program window. When you get these settings shown, make sure you choose the quality as 1000 pixels instead of using the original in the maximum image quality if you're simply publishing online, such as to Facebook or to your online gallery. This way, the image uploads more quickly because the file size isn't too big and still retains enough quality so you can see the image on the web. Picasa also allows you to add watermarks to your images, so remember to apply this to your images so no one uses your images without your permission. They are your pride and joy, so protect them from unauthorized use. After doing your processing and exporting of images, remember to back up your images as well. This is a good practice to get used to, just in case you do lose your files. To do this, simply make a copy of the original pictures to another medium, preferably an external hard drive. They are relatively cheap and having another copy is crucial, just in case something does happen to your originals. Back up your originals. So just to recap on things, we've discussed the importance of getting into sports photography in the first place, and the meaning behind sports. It is not just about getting the best sports photographs. We've gone into capturing sports pictures. These areas include the important factors that do go into making great sports photos, and of course the technicalities. How to compose the images, what we should keep an eye out for to keep taking better photos, the gear we should use, and how to obtain it. In regards to shooting sports photos, how do we actually find the spots to shoot? And remember, you don't have to pick just the one sport. Many options available. And lastly, once you've taken your pictures, how do you process them efficiently and effectively once you do have them back up on your computer? And of course, back up your images. Thanks for tuning in to my short course on sports photography. Feel free to send me any questions you may have on the topics discussed here. My Facebook page is facebook.com/loganphotography. Enjoy shooting and catch you next time.